So tonight's films were two very different, but also very the same films from Shirley Clarke. We've had a collection of Shirley Clarke films on Filmstruck for about 6 months because they're about to expire. And I watched most of the shorts over Christmas break, but I left the two features I hadn't seen because I was going to get to them. And then in true Mariah spirit, I waited till the last week to watch them. We actually have three features on Filmstruck. Portrait of Jason, The Connection, and Ornette Made in America. However, I'd already seen Portrait of Jason a couple times. That is a great film. The ones I watched tonight were The Connection from 1961. That is it pretends sort of to be a documentary, but really it's just sort of a realistic sort of one day in the den of a bunch of musicians sort of hooked on heroin as they wait for their dealer, as they do the drugs, as the documentary filmmaker observes them doing drugs. And I think what's so great about it is that all the things we expect from drug dealers and or drug addicts, none of it really happens. And at one point, the director is like, "This is it? You just guys just sit here and like talk about shit?" And the guy's like, "What, you expect to see everything in one day?" And so it's really like future thinking in that this was one of the first sort of drug culture films. You had a few in the 50s, things like The Man with the Golden Arm, stuff like that, right? But a lot of them were very tempered by the production code, and this is an independently made film, so like fuck the production code. But you sort of started to have the beginning of, and obviously there's some drug films in pre-code Hollywood, look that up. But post this film, you get a lot of sort of mean streets and other, you know, drugs and gangsters or cool kind of stuff again. And that's still kind of where we're at with a lot of drug films. And then you get a film like this that is 50 plus years old, basically saying, like, nah, it's actually not cool, it's not boring. I mean, it's not cool, it's kind of boring, and it's an addiction. And there's another really great conversation where they talk about how someone can be addicted to diet pills and not get arrested, but but they have this jonesing for heroin and they might get arrested. And there's just so many interesting observations and conversations in this film that I feel like we're still having with today's uh, war on drugs, etc. That it's wonderfully prescient film. It's based on a play by Jack Gilber, who also wrote the screenplay for the film. It was restored about 15 years ago by UCLA and is released through Milestone Films, and you can watch it for the next week on Filmstruck, but you can get it on DVD as well from them. And really, Milestone Films is doing some of the great work of American independent cinema from the last 100 years. They've restored so many wonderful films. The next one, oh boy, Ornette Made in America. It's a documentary about Ornette Coleman as he returns home to Fort Worth in 1983. He's getting the key of the city. And it's a lot of interesting footage of Coleman, both in Fort Worth, in his home in New York, when he goes to North Africa, all kinds of things. And it's very in tone with Coleman's style of jazz and also with this era in Shirley Clarke's filmmaking that's very experimental and video and strange. And if you've seen her like adaptation of Savage Love or something or Tongues, you'll be like, oh yeah, I recognize this. She's playing around with effects. At one point, Ornette Coleman is in space. He talks both about his philosophy of music, but also his philosophy of life and love and art, and why he wants to go to space and all kinds of things. And it's just a very interesting portrait of a very interesting American artist. And I highly recommend seeking it out if you're a jazz fan, if you're a documentary fan, and pretty much, obviously, if you're a Shirley Clarke fan. This restoration was one of the last restorations, I think. of Milestone's Project Shirley, or maybe it was in the middle. I can't remember now. But if you're unaware of Project Shirley, I think it's projectshirley.com, and it talks about all of the films that they restored and all of the sets that they released. And most of them are on Filmstruck right now, so you have until Friday to watch like her films, and they're amazing. 3 features, a whole bunch of shorts. You can do it. I watched most of the shorts in one day, so you can get it watched in a week. I guarantee it, and your life will be better, and you will look at cinema in a very different way. I think if you like dance films, there's a lot of really interesting shorts from that. She was a dancer. There's a great documentary on Robert Frost. Like, there's just so many wonderful films. You should watch them. The ones, again, that I watched tonight were The Connection from 1961 and Ornette, Made in America from 1985. They're very Shirley Clarke. I quite enjoyed them.